Beep, 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 beep. Morning all. Jester Extra. I'm getting asked questions in Messenger and email, and so it's easier for me just to talk to you for a bit, and it's a bit of an extra. There's no particular topic. It's just that I went to Manchester University yesterday, as some of you may know. I went to a meeting all about gender in science. And it was surreal. It was absolutely surreal. I've seen some crap in my time, but this took the biscuit. So, anyway, I arrived. It's always very good. This is Manchester Business School. They're terribly good at putting on these events. You get a glass of champagne, or 4 or 5 glasses of champagne, or whatever it is that's on the table at the time. And, people mill about and try to ignore those they find distasteful. Me, usually, right? Okay? And then they all gradually come traipsing in, and it's a sort of mishmash of academics. And what was really interesting this is what's the most interesting thing for me, it's run by the business school, and if anybody can go, so if you're a business you can go, and they send out the details, and, well, please come and join us while this hallowed alumni, all those kind of academic words, love it. There wasn't a business person there. I was trying to find them. You in business? No? Academic? Oh, are you in business? Or a businesswoman? No. Couldn't find one. Right? Couldn't find one. And the person, one of the staff told me they had 170 register, and I walked in the room and there was about 44 there. Right? So in you go, and they brought in this person who I imagine is earning about $3,000 for doing it, whatever they pay each other in their academic circle jerking in the social sciences, which is what this was. But a number of things were notable that it's worth you hearing about. First of all, the staff were brilliant, with the drinks. Have another drink, sir. Have another drink, sir. Have another drink. So the staff were great. And I got to talk to the staff afterwards. I'll tell you about that in a bit. Right, so the staff were brilliant. There was no gatekeeping of any kind. If you wanted to go in, you could go in. It was just an event. I know a few of you watched online. And it was an event that was run by the business school. And it was about equity in science, as I said. And they started, I kid you not, the first slide was a picture of Michel Foucault. And my chin hit the floor. I was like, oh my God, it's the man who likes to molest children on gravestones in Tunisia, which of course is the story that went around in the Times a few years back. And his behaviour has been, I think, an open secret amongst certain people for a very long time. And when you start a seminar on women in science with Michel Foucault, it becomes increasingly difficult for you to take the person who's giving the seminar with any seriousness at all. So I'm looking around the room thinking if anybody else has got this. So I visibly gasped. I went, oh! And a few people looked round and were like, what's wrong with the fat bloke? And I looked at the end of it, and there was an old man, older than me. It was an old guy sat there, just going, oh, fucking, right? It reminded me of the scene in Cabaret. Do you remember when they were singing the song in the beer garden? Oh, mother and father, the old guy's sitting there going, I'm not doing this shit again. Right? And then it starts with the strangest statement. The strangest statements. One of the first statements was, now when I use the word gender here, it is of course to talk about it on a mass scale, and I don't want to get involved in any arguments about sex. And so essentially they said that they don't believe that there's two sexes. And then went on to talk about the problem of women in science. It was one of the most bizarrely cognitive dissonance things I've ever seen anybody do. A sort of linguistic sleight of hand, a legerdemain, that was, this woman came up with, and then put slides up with so much data on it that nobody could understand it. Spoke at the speed of light for 35 minutes, and then sat down and somebody promptly said, thank you so much for making our lived experience real. By which point, I'd shat myself, right? But there's a serious side to this. Whether we like it or not, there is a serious side to this. And what they were talking about was absolute gobblefunk. And essentially it was about how women don't get cited, men don't get cited, men do get cited, women don't get cited, and men have got this and women haven't got that. Some have got it in Mexico, some haven't got it in Australia. There was no sign of anything that was about let's put something right. It was just pure grievance studies. And the word equity was mentioned somewhere in the region of 11 times in half an hour. Now, from what I can gather, what was being spoken about rather than what was being espoused would, if instigated in this country, breach both the Equality Act and the public sector equality duty that Manchester University is bound by. So I'm intrigued to see what happens when I send off my little email asking a few questions and saying thank you later on today. What exactly that ridiculous scenario was supposed to do. And it was all because this woman's got a book about data, and I know it's awful, but it's, I just had to. So I'd look on Amazon, it's 30 quid, and nobody's reviewed it. But the guy that stood up at the beginning, which was this old, sort of dusty academic, the kind I love them. I think they're great. You can listen to them for hours. God, they remind me of those creatures in the dark. Do you remember the Dark Crystal? Where they were like these long-haired things that crawled along and then went, oh. They remind me of them, right? Okay. And the other ones, which are the ones who are doing the presentations, the spiky ones, are like, yeah, like the Skeksis. So he gets up and stands and says, it's very interesting now. We must make sure that science is done through the scientific process. But what we must also do is put a lens that examines science above the scientific process, that will examine it using history, sociology, blah, 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 blah. So he was actually advocating for the placing of the critical social justice lens over science at Manchester University. Avoid it like the plague, kids. If you're a parent or grandparent, you tell your children to avoid Manchester University like a plague. That's what they're putting on. They are actively pushing critical social justice in Manchester University and doing it with smiles and glasses of champagne. That's what they're actively doing. But they couldn't define what a man and a woman was. Now, the truth of the matter is, if you look at some of the slides, I managed to grab a look at a couple of them. There wasn't much difference. They're talking, it's cobblers, right? Women are doing very well in science, thank you very much, particularly in medicine, right? So most of it's just whinging cobblers, right? I don't know what we're supposed to do with this massive data. I mean, what this is, and everybody starts laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing at? You can't even bloody read it from here. They're all sat there like drones. The state of academia. So... And then they talked about crash test dummies and what happened when they made crash test dummies that were supposed to be like women. They just made them smaller men. And then they talked about how women are being disadvantaged by working in medicine. This is true, right? This is true. That medicine was primarily done for men. Well, that's changing. So what it was a mix of truth and untruth. A mix of lies and untruth and communism. And it was, but they didn't say it was communist. Right? I still said thank you, comrades, when I walked out halfway through. Thank you, comrades. I didn't really. I didn't want to get thrown out of the building. There was still wine in the bar. So I then went outside to talk to the people that were around, and there were some students at this little long cave, where they they were putting it away when I came out. I went, where are you going? I'll get another bowl. And it was, so I was talking to them, and they went, and I told them what happened and who was being featured. And when I told them about Foucault, they went grey in the face. Are you telling me that they've just done that in the lecture hall? And I said, yes, they have. They began the presentation on science by using a man who is the most anti-science and nutcasey jobby bloke in the world. Mr. Queer Theory himself, Michel Foucault. They couldn't believe it. And they said, but I thought it was about equity. And I said, what do you mean by equity? And then we had a conversation about equity. And they went, hang on a minute, I don't want that. So that's what they're pushing. That's what they're pushing. And off the five of them? Off the five of them went. Be interesting to see I'd love to know who they're going to be speaking to today. So yeah, although it's quite amusing, there is a very serious side to this. And Manchester University have got a problem. And from what I can see, they are intent upon putting the critical social justice lens on top of science. And that is dangerous. They're going to put equity into science, and that is dangerous. I'm afraid you must now mark off not just Sheffield, but also Manchester University as a university that you would wish to send your son or daughter to. The other interesting thing was the conversation about their reliance on the Chinese. That was interesting. But maybe more on that in another day, another lifetime. I'm going to get some air. I'll see you later.